and it's a pleasure for me to be here and speak with you about frugal innovation. I hope some of you have already heard the name. Is there someone who already knows about the concept? Yeah. Except Koran, yeah. That's a very good sign, because that means I can also talk a bit more in terms of introducing you to the concept. And what I plan to do is to talk about frugal innovation as enabler of affordable sustainability. And that is the key point when we talk about frugal innovation, because affordability is something that we should not lose sight of. And at the same time, it remains a very important criterion that the products, the innovations that we create, they are sustainable. So affordability and sustainability, that's the part that we cover with frugal innovations. The agenda for today is I'll briefly introduce our institute and the center, as Koran also requested me to do. Then I'll talk about the concept of frugal innovations, what's the relevance of frugal solutions, and what sort of research avenues are available as of now in this context. So if there are any questions, please feel free to ask at any point of time. So if something is unclear, if you have a comment, please feel free. So as Koran kindly already mentioned, I'm working at the Hamburg University of Technology. That's the official name in English now. We also do not have the component Harburg anymore officially. It's just TUHH, or Technical University Hamburg. In English, it's Hamburg University of Technology. And there I work at the Institute for Technology and Innovation Management. I lead research programs on global innovation and mobile commerce, also mobile banking, etc. We have co-founded the Center for Frugal Innovation, and I was advising the German Ministry of Education and Research on new global innovation pathways. So this is something like frugal innovation. They are somewhere a result of new global innovation pathways that are emerging, and they are also seen as being relevant for Germany, for example. So it's not as if it's a phenomenon, frugal innovation, which is just low-tech in a negative sense of way and something which is only relevant for emerging economies. No, it's seen as a concept which is critically important also for the developed world, or for the economically developed world. And by the way, in an honorary capacity, I also lead the German-Indian Roundtable in Hamburg. So that's briefly about me. And our institute currently has about more than 20 researchers. We cover different research areas such as user innovation. So innovations do not always have to come from formal establishment. They do not have to come from the formal economy, from companies. There can be users who contribute to innovations. And maybe you would be surprised to see, or maybe you know about it. For example, a mountain bike is not something which was created by a company. It's created by some users. So mountain bike, surfboards, and even things like Uber, Airbnb, these are user innovations. Some users got the idea and they started this. So we look into those phenomena. We look at open innovation, how you can collaborate with companies, with external stakeholders who can support you in creating innovations, being innovative, so that it's not something which is completely closed and in-house. And there are good reasons for that. For example, you can get access to expertise, you can reduce the technology and the market risk. Then we look at sustainable innovation. Circular economy is a large topic at our institute, healthcare and aging, the innovation processes in the company, and what is my main area of research where I'm involved. This is global innovation and frugal innovation, and I will talk about that briefly. But what we have seen is earlier, even about 6-7 years back, innovation and R&D processes, they were supposed to be something highly relevant for your competitive advantage, and they were supposed to be the core competencies which remained in the company at the headquarters. And outsourcing work was only done for routine tasks. Like mostly you gave at least certain tasks to some outside contractor, but innovation as a process was actually concentrated at the headquarters, or at most you went to other developed countries. And what we are seeing today is that innovation processes have become globalized. Companies are innovating in China, India, Brazil, anywhere, so it's more of a global process. The Center for Frugal Innovation, we founded in 2013. We started doing research on frugal innovations way back in around 2008. And by the time 2013, we were convinced that it is something which has potential, which is required, and that's why we went ahead and formed a center which is involved in research and policy guidance. We have done projects for the German government and for the Austrian government. We do teaching in this field, and we also collaborate with industries. And we have, by now, quite a large number of collaboration partners across many continents, even though not so much in Africa and South America, unfortunately, so far. But as you see, like in India, in Australia, in the United States, and within Europe and Germany, we have quite an extensive network of collaboration partners. And in the previous few years, our institute or center has been able to publish a lot about frugal innovations. So that's briefly it about our institute. If you have any questions, you can ask me later on, or you can contact me also later on. That's always possible. Now I finally come to speak about frugal innovations. And maybe before I begin, I had earlier asked about frugal solutions. What is a frugal innovation? And most of you have not said anything, but probably you have heard something about it. But just in order to give you a brief idea of what was supposed to be frugal, I'm not saying it's a scientific definition, but at least one example is given as a frugal innovation. So all of you might have heard of the problem that the astronauts faced when they were traveling in the sky, in the rocket, when you're sitting in your rocket. Basically, you cannot write with your pen. And if you need to note down something, it's a very difficult thing because the normal ball pen would not work. So what was happening? The NASA initiated a project, and after spending, I do not know, maybe something $5 million or so dollars, they came up with a pen with which you can write even when there is no gravity and you're sitting in a rocket, but it can work in those situations. And what did the Soviet Union do? Because they were in a competition. And yes, you guessed it completely right. The Soviet Union, they just used a pencil. A pencil did the same job. And maybe like in a very non-scientific way, we can say this is something where frugality comes in. You start looking at the appropriateness of the solution. Maybe another example. It is said that one of the Indian companies which is producing soaps, they faced a small problem. Most of it was working fine, but sometimes, like they had two production lines, so there is the soap bar coming out, and the sachet, the paper packaging. And at some point of time, it would happen that a mistake happens, that the bar does not go into the packet. So it would be just empty, and it's obviously a problematic thing. If you deliver some empty sachets to the shop or to the supplier, then there would be complaints. So they wanted to have a solution so that this error cannot be, does not happen or can be eliminated. They were asking some German companies to provide a solution, and then they came up with RFID-driven solutions and what can be done, and the solution was again costing something like $10 million, and then you would eliminate the error. This was an amount which was too high for the Indian company, and they hit upon a different idea. Can you imagine what that idea would be? And a 100% working idea. They bought a big fan and put it in front of the production line where the package was coming out. And if it would be empty, it would be simply flown away. You don't need to spend $10 million and use RFID chips and all that. You can simply take care of that. So in a nutshell, that is the idea of frugal innovation. There are many other facets to it, there are many other components to it, and then I'll speak about it, but basically that's the idea. You become very appropriate in your solution, you do not waste away resources. So this concept has been getting increasingly attention from the scholarly community. If you see like this concept, obviously there have been frugal sort of solution even in the past, but as a concept, somewhere in the 2009, it is that people started to take note of it in the scholarly community. So here you see in the Google Scholar how the number of publications that contain the word frugal innovation in it has increased. So just yesterday I checked it last, and we are about close to 4,000 publications within this span, and you see, okay, there is an increasing acceptance and an increasing relevance of this concept. So since you said like frugal innovation is a bit new concept, I have here a few slides where we can talk about the concept in a semantic way of things. So what does frugal mean? Because in some cultures, in the meantime, frugal has already received a negative connotation. Some people believe frugal should be something bad, but it is not. Frugal basically means economical in use or expenditure, prudently saving or sparing, being not wasteful, entailing little expense or requiring few resources. And the origins of this term lies in Latin, where it meant useful, proper, worthy, honest, or economical. And it means careful and saving use of resources to avoid unnecessary waste or expenses. And innovation, as you all know, is like, it's not just invention, it is invention plus the actual application, that the solution that you have created should be applied in maybe like in a non-business settings. It is not necessarily commercialization, but application. Important is that when we talk about innovation, it is not just about technological innovations. There can be business model innovations. It does not always have to be a product innovation. There can be process innovations. You can come up with different processes or a new organizational method in business practices, workplace organization, etc. So this is again something where we say we have been too long focused on high-tech, on product innovations, and we have for a long time ignored process innovations. We have ignored non-technological innovations. For example, also in Germany, we had a high-tech strategy which was very much focused on creating high-tech product innovations and adding more and more features to it. And it's only recently that Germany has also adapted its high-tech strategy to include things like frugal innovations or social innovations. So this is the predominant paradigm in the industry. My team has created a very innovative solution, but we are still looking for a problem to go with it. So it's a simply technology-driven paradigm. You're not looking at the market, it's technology push. You come up with something new, you have an innovative idea, but you actually do not know whether the customer needs it or not. And if yes, then for what purpose? And almost all of us would know this problem. Every car which is created can go up to 260 or 300 or even at a higher speed. But these are things maybe nice to have. How many people actually do need it, especially if you are living in a city, in a metropolitan region? Or if you are selling such a car in a market like India or in African countries, I'm sure it's not much different from India. You do not even have the roads on which you could drive such a car, but you pay for all this functionality. And then another thing which happens is many people do not think about it, but if you are creating a car which runs at a speed of up to 100 kilometers an hour, it is much, much more affordable, or the expenses are much lesser at the stage of development. You do not need to come up with a fancy high tech if the car is not supposed to cross 100 kilometers an hour. So most people would not use it, only few would use it, but all end up paying for this functionality. Then we have the over-engineering problem. So it says like, okay, for Germany, so if you are abroad, normal solution, ticket, money here, card here, press button, take your ticket. Or you can create a solution like this where you are very much sure to miss your next train by the time you have really come to terms with it. And this is not a joke. It has happened to me quite a few times when you come to a new city and by the time you figure out how much to pay for, your bus is gone or train is gone. Recently, it happened to me in Nuremberg in South Germany when I went there and wanted to purchase a ticket for the local travel. You are actually even supposed to type your name using that ticket vending machine. So by the time you type your name for purchasing that ticket, your train is missed. So the over-engineering problem is what we are faced with in today's world. Then, sorry for putting this slide, but could not resist putting this slide on it because this has been the dominant consumption paradigm in our world today. Just go on consuming all you can eat. What the result afterwards is something else, but simply consume. And many years back, I was in London, about, I would say, almost 20 years back. I went to a mall, and I saw a big advertisement which I have never been able to forget. It was a very big banner on which they wrote, "I shop, therefore I am." If I do not shop, then I do not exist. So this is the narrative which has been created. For what? What are the results? What are the results for the planet of this unnecessary consumption? So you're not talking about the real needs of people, even wishes of people, but to everywhere, like every extreme is somehow bad. There is in India a saying which says, it's from Sanskrit, old Sanskrit, which says, Ati sarvatra varjayet. So like the extreme of everything should be avoided. So there is no need to go for the extreme. So like frugal does not mean that you should stop consumption or consuming, but it means be appropriate in your response. So how do we see frugal innovation? How do we define it? We say, it's a bit long definition because we want to be a bit scientific. Then it's about innovative products, services, or processes which seek to create attractive value propositions for the targeted customer groups. So first of all, the first point is you're not trying to create one solution, one size fits all solution for everyone. You look at the target group, see what does this particular target group need, and then you create an attractive solution for that particular group by focusing on core functions and thus minimizing the use of material and financial resources in the entire value chain. So there are a few points, like first of all, focus on core functions. Not everyone needs all other additional functions. You can create a modular solution. If someone needs other solutions, additional functions, you can purchase it additionally, but not everyone has to pay for that. You minimize the use of material and financial resources in the entire value chain, so including from conception up to disposal. Otherwise, what happens is you have sometimes a low price point. Think of your printers. You go to purchase a printer. The printer itself is relatively cheap. But afterwards, when you need a new cartridge, the cartridge is all of a sudden very expensive. You cannot get a cartridge ink here for less than 30 euros. So the price point is low, but the total cost of ownership is quite high. So basically what we are saying is that in the entire value chain, so from your entirely conception, consumption, up to disposal of resources, it should be done while complying with all relevant regulatory norms. So we are not talking about non-standard solutions that may be potentially hazardous or dangerous. No. You fulfill all the relevant regulatory norms, but you can disrupt the prevailing industry standards of what the incumbents have started to do, what has historically taken place. You should or you can put a question mark on it. Is it necessary? Do we need it? And I'll give you an example. A few years back, we had a symposium, and a large German company came to our symposium. They are in the business of creating machines for producing paper. So big machines to produce paper. And a typical product costs something in the range of about 300 million euros. And they were faced with the problem that competition in China was able to produce machines on a much smaller scale for something like 50 million euros. So now the problem was what to do with this, because they create a solution, a large solution, an almost perfect solution for 300 million, which can work for 30 years. The competition is creating solutions which cost you a fraction of what the other solution costs, but it is very much focused and it will last maybe only 10 years, not 30 years. And the customer is saying, I'll purchase rather this, I pay less, after 10 years I can switch to the new, better technology. So what this company was doing, they said they started to have a relook at the solution, and they found out that almost 40% of the things could be simply taken out, stripped away. They had no real function. Over the time, some engineer got a new idea, said, oh, we could put this functionality. Or someone else says, okay, this is also something that we can do with the new machine, with the new version. So over the years, almost 40% of the functions came in, which were not really required. So that's why we need to be disruptive. We need to put a question mark. Is it something which is required? And then if yes, by whom? So this is what we call about frugal innovations or frugal solutions. And I have a few examples to illustrate the concept to you. An Indian mobile set manufacturer, and they came up with, the company is called Micromax. And in the meantime, the last I saw it, they were the 9th largest mobile telephone manufacturer in the world. So it grew up a lot. And what they did was to advertise their product with this slogan. They took iPhone 4S and then modified it to say, I can afford this phone for sure. To cater to aspirations of people. Other people who cannot afford to have an iPhone, but they do want to have a smartphone. So why should we not take care of the affordability issue? Then another example here you see, it is from the Indian company Tata Motors. Way back in 2005, they introduced a car in the South African market. And this was the advertisement that they put in the Financial Week in South Africa. And since you probably cannot read this so well from where you are sitting, you can see here they said more features you need and less that you don't. So what is yes that you need? Power brakes, power steering, ABS brakes, tinted windows, etc. What they do not have is a splash sticker on the side of car, promotional girls with balloons, rain-sensitive wipers, and a jacuzzi. So now, what's the gist of this? This is my interpretation now. I say, if you're selling this product in South Africa or even in India, you most often really do not need rain-sensitive wipers. You see it's raining, you can press a button and then it can start, right? And if it saves maybe $100,000 or even $1 million in the development, and you can reduce the cost of this car by $200 for the customer, why not do it? Why are we trying to tell people that you need this technology just because it's a technology? So affordability, the customer becomes the central point, the focus point of your innovative solution. So frugal, if we say, okay, it's a bit like with the consultants, taken the acronym and said frugal. Frugal means focused functionality, but by the way, it's not just like consultants. We actually did a content analysis and we tried to find out what are the characteristics that are associated with frugal innovations, and then we put it in a way so that we can maybe remember it more nicely. Focused functionality, they should be robust and resource efficient. Robust because if you take, as a global company, you take your product developed for the German market and you take it to Africa, India, they mostly do not work. A few months back, there was a report that the German army's trucks, they failed in Mali because the temperatures went up to 50 degrees. And the German army's trucks were no more working. So you have a highly sophisticated technology which cannot deal with the local conditions. They're not robust enough. So what we sometimes need is, that's why what we want to say is that the point is, it does not mean, frugal innovation does not mean less functionality or less performance. It means the right performance that you need for the respective market. User-friendly, because you might be dealing with people who have no prior knowledge or prior experience in dealing with similar sort of products. They create new growth opportunities, affordability. Affordability, again, should be having more dimensions. And this is important, I would say, because the concept of frugal innovation has also developed over the years. Initially, it was only about financial affordability. In the meantime, what we see is it should be affordable to the consumer, but it should be also affordable to the society. It's not as if we simply want to increase consumption to the people, or increase consumption by the people, which with negative effects for the society or environment. And it should be affordable in terms of infrastructure. What do I mean by that? See, like there are many companies. I will take the example of India, and I would be sure that it's maybe also in other parts of the developing world not much different. For example, in India, there are companies selling facial creams, etc., to women to make them more fair. And they can be cheap at the purchasing point of time, but you're creating a consumption habit which is maybe not healthy at the end of the day. So is it good for the society or not? This is something we need to take care of. Is it good for the environment? If you remember about those sachets in India it's for 1 rupee, I do not know how it is maybe in your countries. So small sachets with shampoos, etc., very small packaging. From a certain perspective, it's good. But what does it mean for the environment? Can we afford to have it? Do we have the recycling capacities to handle that? So those things have to be taken into account. Infrastructure. If I come up with a telephone set and we do not have landlines in those areas, how would that work? So when we talk about frugal innovation and affordability, it's not about the individual affordability. There may be rich people living in rural areas, but if the infrastructure is not there, it does not make any sense. So affordability should have more dimensions than just financial affordability. And the products are less complex, or rather also more simplified. And maybe to give you one example is here, it was a water filter created by a company of the Tata Group, which works with nanotechnology, and it can make the water potable, drinkable for a very cheap cost. You do not need electricity, you do not need running water, and it costs something like $8. So with $8, most people can hopefully afford it. So such sort of solutions are what we call frugal innovations. So keep in mind who are the target groups, what is the appropriate technology. Do not fall into the trap of high-tech or low-tech, simply look at the appropriateness. What is it that we need? What is it that would work in the given user context? What is it that my product must be having? What is the must criteria, and what is optional upgrades, needs and wants, robustness? Do not go for planned obsolescence. You purchase a product, you purchase a printer, you purchase something, and after 2 years, it stops working. Even your smartphones, after 2 years, mostly they start giving you some sort of error message because the company wants you to purchase a new one. So do not, we must question, is it the right way to develop our products? And then to look at what is our price point, what are the cost of uses and maintenance, and the cost of disposal. So keep in mind the total cost of uses or ownership. And here are maybe a few examples of where innovations have been created with low tech, like they're not very high R&D intensity developed innovations. For example, here an artificial heart that was under trial at Indian Institute of Technology in Kharagpur, which was inspired by the multi-chamber fault-resistant heart structure of cockroaches. So cockroaches have, I think, 13 chambers, and that's why, like, if one chamber fails, they can still survive. So this is where people were trying to learn from. Or he sterilized mosquito nets as a low-cost substitute for the expensive commercial meshes for repairing hernias. And clinically tested, they could use it after sterilization and it was 4,000 times cheaper. So many times what the companies are doing is sell the consumers products for very high prices, but it is actually not required. So the question is that we take a product and we really ask ourselves, is it something that we require, we need, can we afford to sell it? Can the customer afford to have it? And we can see many such examples where process innovations have been done, where you have used analogies, taken certain technologies from one industry, applied it to the other, and that you can reduce costs because the technology is already proven, it is already existing. And one example here maybe, these are solar-powered ATMs, which were created in the Indian market. You use them, you do not need air conditioning in that place, especially designed to suit conditions prevalent in rural and semi-urban areas, no need for air conditioning. They can work between 0 and 50-degree temperature, can run on solar energy, and total cost of ownership is about 50% less than for conventional ATMs. And we visited that company and they showed us like what sort of innovation they had done. It was a radical innovation and it worked very well. Or we saw a solution by the Austrian company called Andritz, which created a mini grid solution for the Madagascar market, where you can like use hydro energy and some other forms of renewable energy which can be mixed. So a hybrid solution for providing energy, wind, solar, biomass, and even combines with wastewater management, a cost-effective approach which does not need, like it's a plug-and-play solution. You do not have to have maintenance people there who will take care of that. Basically, what we are looking at is substantial cost reduction, concentration of core functionalities. So like that's the conventional innovation and this is frugal innovation. So you look at what is exactly required and come up with an optimized performance level. And optimized performance level does not mean less performance, it means just the right sort of performance that you need. So what is the relevance of frugal solution? And just keep in mind the time, okay? So in a research we came up with different, like we had an analysis, what does it mean to be frugal and how has the society been treating frugality over the years? So at once upon a time, it was a universal moral ethical value. It was normal to be frugal. I was reading some text. There's a website called sacredtext.com, and then if you search for this term frugal, then somewhere there was a text, I do not know whether it was the Bible or something else, but the text was the wise and that the nature, so wise and frugal. We are here in this wonderful campus. Nature is always frugal, wise and frugal. So it was a moral value. Then after World War II, this more or less got into a bad reputation, I would say. Companies tried to push back frugality. Why? Because in affluent societies, saturated markets, companies wanted to create more wants and needs so that people continue purchasing new products. Like if you think of the US, in the United States of the 1950s, you could not purchase a small car even if you wanted because they stopped producing small cars. They would only sell SUVs. So that way frugality was pushed out of the societal discourse. There was some small renaissance in 1970s when the terms came up, small is beautiful, appropriate technologies, but this did not really succeed. Then around 2005, this is where frugal innovation actually emerged from. Afterwards, in emerging economies, as a means to increase standards of living, the concept of frugal innovation came up. And what we are seeing it as today is, even if in niches, even in the developed world or all around the world, we see a demand or a need for frugal solutions, because if you think of it, if everyone around the world wanted to live the same way, the same standard of living as a typical European, do you think one Earth is enough, one planet is enough for us? No, we need 2.5. If we were to live the lifestyle of an average American, how many Earths do we need? Will 2.5 be enough? No, I think we need about 7. And if we were to live like a typical person, I believe in Qatar or Abu Dhabi, we need 43 Earths. The Earth simply does not provide these resources. We will have to go frugal, and not just people in particular continents or particular countries. Around the world, around the globe, we do not have the resources. Not everyone can drive SUVs, not everyone around the world would have just the same wastage of resources that we have been seeing so far. That's why we see like it is going to be responsible innovation, and responsibility would mean that around the world we would have to go for less complexity, more moderate lifestyles, and less wastage of resources. And there is also a voluntary simplicity and environmental awareness, demographic changes in the society, and what is important is also global societal challenges. We will have to go for it. We have to provide food security. We have to provide affordable housing. Otherwise, things will not work out. And you see, like here you see the share of selected countries in the global automotive production. You see, like Brazil, China, India have taken over what USA, Japan, Germany, and Spain, and France were producing so far. So where are the new markets? They are in the developing economies. They need affordable solutions. The share of developing and emerging countries in global GDP, you can see that slowly the share of emerging economies is picking up. So at the end of the day, these are the consumers whom we need to address. Then what happens? If you look here, for example, this is just an example. You can see it will be true for most of the emerging economies. 60% of the market purchasing power is in customer segments who earn less than, let's say, €2 a day. And the very top is just about 0.3% of the market. And most of the companies, what they try to do, they try to address the premium market, the premium segment. There's no purchasing power. Yes, some people have a lot of money, but most of the people have less money. And this is what we need to address. Here you see the passenger car market in India. This is how the market looks like. And this is the share of, if you can see it, the German market share. So the German car manufacturers, because they are not present in those markets where they are supposed to be or they should be. They try to cater to the luxury market, which is very small. And more people or more companies that are successful here, they come up with more products and they start competing in the luxury segment. So the German car makers, 10 years back, had a 100% market share in the Indian market in the luxury segment. Today it has gone down. Yeah.
Is that a return or a monetary unit on the x-axis?
This is the number of cars sold. Okay. So yeah. Yeah. So basically, like what's happening is by concentrating on the premium segment, they are ignoring the vast opportunities that may be available here, and in the process, they might even lose this segment because there are other companies, other competitors who are taking care of that. So we need, with the these global sustainable development goals, we see there is a need. Otherwise, there would be severe law and order issues around the world if people do not get enough to eat, get enough to security, not affordable medical care, etc. So for that, we again need frugal solutions. It will never work out to simply ignore what the needs of the people are. To give brief examples here, for example, in India, only 2% of vegetables and 4% of fruits are processed because we do not have enough technology available, which is affordable, which can help us to save them. And then there is a widespread use of primitive processing in the unorganized sector. So you end up losing about 50% of iron and 67% of folic acid in making wheat flour in the unorganized sector. So it is not good for the society, and it's not good for the individuals. And it comes from the lack of affordable, good quality solutions. That is the need for frugal solutions. In the healthcare sector, if you see, illnesses of the rich world are increasingly reaching the global south, where the societies are not yet even rich enough to provide that medical care. So cancer, or we look at diabetes. So these are things that again require frugal solutions. And the take, make, and waste economy that has worked, or that we have seen so far, it is, first of all, not sustainable. Secondly, it probably will not work in the longer run. And I was looking at a few examples where plastic waste is being probably used for something sustainable, if it is possible. That is for you to decide. I think you are scientific experts on that. But I saw an example of using plastic waste here, for example, in India to build roads, but also certain buildings using washrooms or something else. A stone tile measuring 1 square meter has a manufacturing cost of about £1, British pound, or 1.2 euros. It would be 60 plates would be sufficient to construct an eco-friendly bathroom, says the person who has invented it. This material could also be used to pave sidewalks, replacing cement, etc. So there is, again, a frugal solution which is possible. Or I saw one example from Tanzania. It's a South African firm which uses, again, plastic waste in order to create frugal housing solutions. And one of the headlines said $300 house. I do not know whether it's true or it can really work out with $300, but the headline was $300 house with Muladi. So a low-tech, scalable, and affordable building solution to improve and expand social infrastructure. We see in the developed world too, for example, here in Austria, houses which are built on a modular basis, pre-cut. You bring them to the site where someone wants to have a house, and since they are movable objects, you do not even need government permission to build a house, because you can even transfer them. You want to relocate, you want to go somewhere else, you just order the company and they come and they pick it up and they take it away, put somewhere else. You can add new modules to it, you can expand, you can reduce, whatever you like with pre-cut solutions for changing life situations, and price is available from around 1,560 euros per square meter gross floor area. So I think it's a quite affordable solution. And I saw something similar also in Japan. Normal houses built of wood, where I met a company. They told us they had an internal competition, and in that competition, one of the teams succeeded in creating a house from scratch, building the foundation, bringing everything together, putting electricity, water, everything within 22 hours. So a house that can be created in 22 hours, and people can move in the next day. So it is possible, and I'll come with an interesting point afterwards about that. And we said, as I said in the beginning, these sort of things which are about cheap, or making a particular product or service cheap, something like this. Or we see here a person from India, this is a term called Grassroots Innovation. So under Grassroots Innovations, you can see something like this. So there is a fellow who created a bicycle which can work on like a boat on water. So he uses it to cross the river using his bicycle, an innovative solution. Or a makeshift solution, you do not have a bridge, and then how using boats you can carry on your truck from one place to the other. So these are things, these are possible things that make a solution cheaper in a given context, but they do not represent frugal innovation in our opinion, because they're not sustainable. They do not meet the aspirations of the consumer. As soon as the person has a bit more money, the person would shift away from purchasing these products. So we need to cater to the aspirations of people. You have to look at principles like design to cost. Design to cost means avoiding over-engineering. So many times what happens, this is the customer expectation, this is what the customer is expecting from you, but actually his needs are a bit more different. Sometimes even you do not know what exactly your needs are. If someone came to you, what sort of a, let's say, razor do you need? You cannot explain. So customer needs are a bit different from customer expectations. So if you only match those expectations, sometimes you would not be successful because the customer sees the performance as insufficient. Then you can come up with an over-engineered product, or you can come up with a product which exactly meets the needs and the expectations. And this is one way to create frugal solutions, to find out the different methodologies that are available to us, what the customer needs are, and to meet those needs. The basic principles that we need while creating frugal solutions are that we have to, first of all, have empathy with the potential customer. If we cannot put ourselves into the shoes of the person who is going to use it, we might never come up with a solution that will, at the end of the day, work out. So empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. This is how a normal frugal innovation process would work out. And again here, coming from our research, the pathways for frugal innovation, first of all, customer-specific value proposition, minimal use of resources, affordable cost of ownership with a frugal design, and a frugal culture, a culture in the company which promotes frugal solutions. And then we have to, in the innovation process or in our value chain, we have to constantly ask ourselves, do we need to do this thing internally? Do we need to make it, or we can buy it, make or buy? We have to have access to open global innovation networks. We need to collaborate with people, and that way it can work out. So at the end of the day, it is about affordable green excellence. So with Frugal Age, I call it a Frugal Age, with the acronym, and that age is requiring us to create affordable, green, and excellent solutions so that we can meet the customer aspirations, and we can also match the question of frugality, the affordability, the regulations, sustainability issues, etc. So keeping in mind the time, I would stop here now, and I would be glad to take your questions and comments and look forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.